Alright, we are now in version 253 of Maplestory, and we were just hit with a big familiar improvement, right? Mystical cards have been added that are similar to red cards, but they do not rank up the familiar tier. So common familiar stays common, rare stays rare, epic stays epic, and unique stays unique, and legendary stays legendary. So for the 100 people that have legendary Pinot or Lotus familiars, congratulations. This update caters towards you, right? You 100 people absolutely won this update. The rest of us, yeah, we are in the gutter with this one because you only get one of these reset cards per month. And I imagine the usual folk, the average Joe just like me, isn't even gonna buy this familiar card because it costs 10,000 familiar points, which is just way more than making a unique familiar from scratch, right? So I really don't see the point in this update. Also, naming this familiar improvements is just a spit in the face, to be honest, because this isn't doing us anything. And I don't even want to spend so much time on this particular change here in this video, because I'd rather review my own video from 2 months ago after the first Inkwell note has been published saying that familiars were now spawning or dropping I suppose, in Cernium, right? The exact wording was, there have been ongoing requests from GMS players to add familiars to the Grandest continent. This update, version 252, adds familiar drops to the Cernium area of the Grandest continent. After this update, we will continue to consider updating familiar cards to other Grandest areas sequentially. So, in my previous video, I was offended by this because it didn't really cater towards me, and you as the viewer in this case had the task basically to extrapolate my situation and apply to yours, see if this does anything for you or not. Of course, since this video dropped, I just switched mains entirely, so adding familiars to Cernium was actually great because I get to farm them again. But if you're wondering, I haven't gotten any good familiars on my Blaze Wizard anyways, as of now. So, I actually don't want you to return to this video and rewatch it in order to understand my points. I'm just gonna summarize it here, and then what we're gonna do is, and I think it's probably gonna be interesting, I have no idea actually, because, I don't know, this is gonna be an experimental episode, and just stick me, maybe treat this as kind of podcast maybe, right? Anyways, the 3 points, or my 3 major gripes that I had with this particular wording here and the introduction of familiars to Cernium were that the general argument was, okay, adding familiars to Cernium is guaranteed gains for everybody, right? But the thing that people forgot to notice is that there are a lot less mobs that are spawning in Cernium compared to the later regions. So even though you're making guaranteed gains and are able to farm familiars, you're gonna make less frags because you're gonna end up killing less mobs, as well as you're gonna make less mesos if you're already kind of out of level range, which at the point of making this video I was at 284 Nightwalker, so I was already very well out of level range in this case. The second point was the wording here that this is just gonna be the first step. And the last point, which was the weakest point of this whole video, was that I felt a strong obligation to go back and refarm familiars to get the 120% boss damage from the familiars, right? Basically because Nightwalker doesn't provide any party buffs, so you gotta be as strong as possible to be useful for your party, right? And I just felt that I would need to go back to, Cernium in order to grind out the extra 40%, right? And my opinion has changed since then, but let's just go through a couple of comments and refine and get to that opinion with this video. I think, honestly, like I said, this is gonna be an experiment. If it doesn't go well, dude, next week's video is gonna be better. I promise. Alright, so let's start with the pinned comment here from Rasmus, I knew what the comments would be while I was watching your video. Personally, I agree, even though I myself is someone who will greatly benefit from the Grinders Familiars being released. I feel like people watching your video are purposefully ignoring the continuing to consider adding more Familiars to the Grinders regions. You know, the thing that was written like this in the Inkwell note. You even mentioned yourself that this is why you made the video and people just ignore it, right? It is clear from that statement that they have considered it and decided not to implement it, at least not now. Hopefully they do decide to implement familiars from later areas in the future, as it should be. It is absolutely ridiculous that a system such as familiars is not implemented in each and every possible zone or area, but why implement it when they know most people, including myself honestly, though it won't be by a lot, I'm only 274 at the moment, is happy to personally love their own experience and measure rates a bit to farm it out in Cernium. And I want to start off with this comment because, like I said, this was quite a controversial video, and you're gonna see a couple of comments that I don't really think really watched the video, but we're gonna get to that. Also, if I'm gonna expand on the answers here, you can see that Nox answered, which is another guy that does YouTube as well as Twitch streaming. This may be the first time he'll realize this as a YouTuber. It doesn't matter what your actual reasoning is, people just read the title and will start commenting lol. Just let them waste their time farming for a boss farm that will never come. If they hit great, if they don't, it's their own time they're wasting anyway. Yeah, so to kick things off, I think, yeah, obviously familiars should be in all regions, and you know, it's been 2 months since they said that they are continuing to consider adding more familiars, and now it's quite clear that they have considered adding more familiars, but would rather implement familiar cards in a pay-to-win system in Reboot, right? Which is, yeah, I hate it. I hate it so much. And I will personally not buy the battle passes that will give out 20 of these familiar rerolls for 100 euro, right? Basically over a year, over 1.5 years of familiar rerolls for 100 euro. That's ridiculous, to be honest. If they would have given out these familiar cards as like a login reward for Reboot, right? We all know that the login reward is different for Rec server and Reboot, and for Reboot, honestly, one familiar reroll a day would be kind of cool. And then if they had this familiar card package in the season pass, I honestly wouldn't even think of it as malicious, right? It would still be 20 days of additional rerolls, which then sounds kind of okay. Then I left a comment myself saying this is kind of a special episode. Alright, and then we gonna get into the meat of things. So, 79 upvotes, this was a really common opinion. Sorry, but I'm more concerned for the new players and those with zero boss farms than your own personal progression min-maxing. You have 80%, let's not act like you came out with nothing. Going back to Cernium is not an obligation. So, I mean, obviously, it is great for new players, and I really should have said this a couple of times throughout the video for everybody to get that. That's also my opinion, right? But the second point of this comment is much more interesting to me. Like I said, initially, there were kind of 3 points to my whole argument, right? And the last one was that I felt a strong obligation to go back down to Cernium, right? And that's also the weakest part of the argument for me, right? Because I should just have the mental strength, maybe, to just stick it out and not go down and not start gambling for these additional 40%, right? Maybe I can compare it to the obligation that you felt when you still had wild totems left in the cash shop to grind them out, right? I think it's on a similar level of feeling the obligation, right? For me personally, I also felt an obligation to grind out all wild totems, and I welcomed them being removed because of that obligation, right? But for example here, King Jong Gaming Official probably would not agree with that argument, right? For them it would probably be no, the wild totems were great, and having them removed is a net loss, which is honestly a 100% fair take. Next up, we have Misusing TV, another Twitch streamer who I think plays Wild Hunter. So, he says, you were able to pre-farm farms before 6th job, lucked out, and a lot of people now do not have that luxury of doing so, since 6th job is guaranteed gains, and you would be stupid to stay and farm familiars in Limina. So, to address this, I was able to pre-farm familiars before 6th job, which was extremely nice. If you consider getting 80% for 7 months of farming in Limina lucked out, that's the way it is. I think it's actually kind of sad. If you compare to, you know, farming one afternoon during the Oda Warrior bug, I guess. So, yeah, especially comparing to that, right? Or Junior Boogies, right? It's the same thing. Yeah, I don't know if it's lucked out or not, right? But okay. And now at least it's guaranteed gains for everybody else, right? And yeah, it is guaranteed gains, and you would be stupid right now to stay and farm familiars and Limina while you can just get fragments in Cernium, right? And the thing that Misusing TV here forgot to reflect on maybe is that adding familiars to Cernium just reinstated the like previous status quo, because in my case I sacrificed experience for familiars, and now if you go back down to Cernium and you were previously, you know, farming in Odium, Shangri-La, etc., you're also just sacrificing experience and maybe some fragments, because, you know, Cernium Burnium maps don't hold as many mobs as later area map continents. No, continents? Yes, I think so. So, you know, anyways, I do agree that only releasing them in Cernium areas is stupid and will bottleneck the community. Yeah, especially because there are only 4 maps with decent mob counts, and yeah, that's really rough right now. But it's a step in the right direction, and yeah, I mean, it's a step in the right direction, but now 2 months have passed and we are still waiting for the next step into the right direction, because right now we took a step into the opposite direction, in my opinion, right? Getting spit on in the face with a monetization scheme is probably the opposite of another step, right? Now, instead of being told to forget about farms after you hyperburn your fresh character to 260, you will have the ability to continue to farm farms in Cernium and make progress with 6 drop alongside each other until about 275, the highest level mob. Yeah, now he, yeah, okay. Until about 275, the highest level mob in Burnium is 264, so realistically you can stay until 275 before losing meso gains, and even then people will sacrifice mesos for familiars. I think the play is to grind it out and get what you get until 275, push to 285 to unlock all symbols and dailies, and then go back to farm more farms. And yeah, again, it's, you know, that was probably also a weak point of the video, because I should have, you know, I don't really want to put words into people's mouths, right? This is just the obvious point, right? Of course, for new players, it was amazing that the familiars drop now, right? But this wasn't the point of the video, right? Let's continue. Currently, 290 is not needed for anything in the game, even for HLotus, so you have the luxury of farming farms. Well, in the 2 months, I think even a week after this comment, yeah, things have changed, and this part of the comment aged like milk, basically. Now people are releasing tier lists based on whether a class can even participate in an hard limbo party or not, right? And even then, if you already had the luck to play one of the classes that have or are allowed to participate in the hard limbo parties, then you also have to be 290, and you also have to have proper familiars, right? So yeah, I mean, now it's like really rough. He says, he continues to say, I don't think boss damage farms bottleneck you from doing any content in this game, and is only relevant if you want to compare yourself to your peers or be the best of the best. I do hope... Okay, so yeah, I don't agree with this at all, right? Because whenever new content is released, you need to be as strong as you can in order to participate in it, right? Or otherwise you are locked out from it, right? And in this case, familiars do give such a huge damage boost that honestly, that's the main gripe here, right? You kind of have to have them if you want to participate in the newest content, right? So yeah, this honestly, this is probably something that Misusing TV would not say anymore, you know, just because hard limbo is not gonna be clearable otherwise. Alright, so I do hope Nexon rolls out Grandis farms regularly and not make us wait a super long time before the next badge. Yeah, me too, me too. It's been 2 months, we have not stepped into the right direction, sadly, to be honest, sadly. Continuing with Farseer, if you're unhappy about familiars being added to Cernium, you can literally just ignore them and move on with your life. I don't understand how this is a problem. Again, this guy is talking about the obligation part of my argument, right? Completely fair to say this. Moving on. Classic, I had a hard time, so you should too. Here, honestly, it's kind of sad that this comment has 44 upvotes, because this wasn't even any close to what I've said in the video. Obviously, it was kind of different, right? And I had a hard time, but what this person doesn't realize that they are also gonna have a hard time, exactly the same hard time, right? The status quo has not changed, right? For a brief moment, while 6 Job was released, you definitely had 0 access to familiars, right? And then they just reinstated that status quo. Okay, now you can farm 6 Job fragments and farm familiars, right? But it's exactly the same thing that I had to go through, and I'm complaining that I had to go through that, and I'm actually on your side with this one. So this comment doesn't make any sense at all, but you know, that's probably what Nox touched on in his comment here, saying that people start writing comments as soon as they see the video title, which the video title was extremely controversial, right? It was Cernium familiars will hurt my progression, but I just wanted people to click on it, and in the end, of course, they didn't hurt my progression because I just decided to main switch anyways. Alright, so moving on to Kimchi Man here. I love Kimchi. I'll take lol. Spent hours making this video and still failed to hear how bad you sound. Okay, at this point, let me just shortly bring up the responsibility that I have here in terms of managing my own comments, right? Of course, I'll take lol is kind of mean, right? And I have the option to just delete comments, etc. But as you will see as we move down, I do not usually remove any comments, even when they don't add anything to the discussion, right? But I gotta say, I did spend a couple hours making this video, but I got pretty good at video editing by now, so it didn't take me forever. And I was actually kind of proud of the effects, etc. that I had in the video. Anyways, yeah, I don't have anything to take away from this comment. Next up we have Call Me Toniga, and this person is a long-time viewer and commenter on this channel, so yeah, love to read comments from you. This guy is saying, hindsight is 2020, you got familiars set up pre-6 Job, you are ahead of the curve in that regard, while people are going to go back or wait for later area familiar, and right now your hexa outweighs the gains of min-maxing an extra 40%. And this comment is really smart and made me think for quite a bit because of that last part here. Min-maxing an extra 40% boss damage. In my case, I have 30%, 30%, and 20% boss damage familiar on my Nightwalker, totaling to 80%, right? At the max, you can have 120% boss damage on your familiars, right? But that would mean that I had to have improved, or like I had to improve all 3 familiars, right? In order to get the 120%. And that just means that the point where I'm at with 80%, I'm only like 10% of the way there to actually have them min-maxed, right? And that's actually not worth my time, right? And this was the comment that really made me think about the obligation part of this argument, right? I have the obligation to be as strong as possible, right? That's what this game boils down to, right? Everybody wants to know how much damage you do to a dummy. That's what you put into your application when you join parties. So this game is about damage, right? But min-maxing an extra 40% is gonna take me so long that I could realistically just grind somewhere else and get the damage through the level advantage multiplier. And yeah, great comment, thank you so much. So, next up, a comment by Edward here. Just wait till they release in the later areas. Why the rush? Another like really a nice comment, because this comment just boils it down without even having to write paragraphs on paragraphs on paragraphs. Why the rush? Just chill out and wait for it, right? If it doesn't come out, whatever, man. Don't take yourself too seriously. Eventually, you're gonna be caught up to familiar abusers, etc., right? So, yeah, why the rush? So next up, we have a comment by Pumped Chef. I understand your perspective, but you have to remember, up until now we were completely ignored about many of the core issues in GMS. I think that the hype people have around farms and other things is not related to the actual farms in Cernium. It's the idea and hope that we are going to get GMS to listen to the player base and potential of it. And yeah, I think this guy makes a great point, and that's also why I got quite a bit of backlash on this video here, because the people saw the Inkwell node. It was the first improvement in many months to the familiar system, and they got their hopes up, and this was really just the first step for them, right? But now, honestly, 2 months have passed. We gone back into the other direction again with the improvements here, and I don't think, given the track record here that this company had, that you should ever give them the benefit of the doubt or be high on hopium. Yeah, it's just it usually doesn't work out, right? So, you have to remember that implementing things takes time, and especially when things originate from other regions where you don't have control over. Big companies are notorious about being slow as well, but the fact that we got some indication that they are willing to listen to us, even though they haven't implemented everything, is a step in the right direction. I hope it makes sense. Yeah, big company moves slowly, right? What they've done now here is that they have shown us in the patch that they have the capability of giving us what we have asked for, but they restricted the access to the familiars now, and I hope that, you know, now everybody will see that it is actually malicious and not just, okay, it takes time, etc., yada yada yada, right? No, it's now they just have to change, you know, one parameter in a piece of code, and we would have a great game, right? But they aren't willing to do that at all. At least as of this moment. Maybe this changes, but you know, 10,000 familiar points and 1 a month. It should be 1 a day for 10 familiar points. Like it shouldn't cost anything, right? And it would still take forever to catch up to the people who already have amazing familiars, right? So, next up, we have Base G. The reason why no one brings up your opinion is because this is just an omega bad take. So because the company is doing something that is overall good for the game, but also something that you don't want to participate in, it is a bad update? No, that's not entirely the point, right? It's still kind of good for many people, but the point was, it's not good enough. It's just not good enough. Next up, from Dylan. Sounds like a you problem to me. At least the rest of the player base can benefit, right? ... Exactly, right? This guy at least understood the video, right? It's a me problem, and at this point I can also say that a lot of people, not a lot of people, right? But a couple of people, like 3-4 people, reached out to me on Discord via DM just to tell me their situation and why they feel similar to how I felt in this video, right? Also high-level players that are in this limbo. Should I go back to gamble for familiars while I'm sacrificing my guaranteed experience gains, right? And yeah, it's not just a me problem, but you know, from my peers who are in a similar level range with similar gear, etc., the problem was more talked about as the update was introduced, right? People got to feel it out. Is farming in Cernium actually worth it or not, etc.? And then, you know, we talked about it some more, right? But like this guy says, at least the rest of the player base can benefit, right? And honestly, yeah, kind of in the end, if I were to make a binary decision, W update or L update, I would say, you know, the last update was a W update after all. Next up, what are you talking about? 95% of players never seen a single boss damage farm. You have 3. Yeah, exactly. And I think many people here have the assumption that they will just go to Cernium, or, you know, maybe fresh Hyperburn players will have the assumption, oh wow, they're adding familiars, now I can just farm them in Cernium and Burnium, and once I reach Odium, I'll be gone, have 3 boss damage familiars, and I'm good to go to head towards the end game, right? As of now, right now, I'm 271 and I haven't gotten any usable boss damage familiar yet. So next up, a comment by Purple Grizz. I just gonna read out the last part here. I think your video did a poor job of conveying the message you wanted to convey. Statements like Cernium familiars will hurt my progression makes it sound like, despite griefing your progression by farming familiars before, you plan on making the same decision again when you don't even have to. I think it would have been better just to say Cernium familiars will hurt your progression. Then outline your experience and how you grieved yourself, how the situation really hasn't changed, and how new players will still go through the same experience, albeit less bad, despite the addition of Cernium familiars. What did I answer here? Okay. Well, I don't want to speak for other people, which I would refrain from, you know, title suggestion. Oh my god, I really wrote a lot here. Okay. I also, here, I covered 3 points, 3 options that I would see as viable moving forward with the system, right? The first option is add red cards for Mesos. The second option is add familiar cards to all Grandes regions, remove common familiars and let them drop as rare and epic with the option of ranking them up to legendary, just because honestly Reboot is in need for additional power right now. Or the third option is remove the system, while obviously introducing other systems to make us stronger, right? Because right now we are lacking damage, as is very apparent by the H-Limbo situation. Anyways, let's just go to the next comment. This was a long comment. I hope I didn't do you injustice, Purple Grizz. Okay, next up we have Real Yang 9813. I'm sorry that Nexon is putting a gun to your head, forcing you to farm in Cernium. I think this comment is really funny. Again, you know, playing on the whole obligation part of my argument, which was kind of weak, right? And also, at this point, I just want to thank everybody for leaving comments here, because comments make you think, right? And a lot of people have mentioned the obligation part of the argument in other words, right? And have put it into their own words. And that also made me feel less pressured to go down, right? Like I said, eventually, you know, I switched mains anyways, but, you know, it's whatever. But, you know, comments like these help, even though, you know, I don't think this is hostile at all, right? It's funny. And next up we have a comment by Varrior Casper. No, my god. This is like telling your boss that you hate getting a raise because now you're gonna spend more money. This is like telling your boss that you hate getting a raise because now you're gonna spend more money. Dude, the alternative to this was going back to Arcane River again for new farms. I don't get what he's trying to say here, but yeah, obviously the alternative is or wasn't viable, right? But that wasn't the point of this video. Next we have the Uwu E-Girl. I don't get it, lol. It just seems like you're trying to make like 9 different points in this video. Oh, I'm behind, blah blah blah. Yeah, you are literally upset Nexon is giving us another avenue to farm familiars. Yeah, like making 9 points in one video, that's how you build an argument, right? And yeah, the last part of this comment is very valid though. You are literally upset Nexon is giving us another avenue to farm familiars. And yeah, this is right what this person brings up here. More options are very rarely a bad thing, right? And I think I say it in the video, if they wouldn't have chosen, you know, such a malicious way to word their way moving forward, right? I think I wouldn't even have made the video to begin with, right? Because more options are better. Moving on. Now we are starting to get into the comments that don't really have a lot of upvotes. Just stick to the comments with a little more than just, you know, 2 upvotes. Let's do it like that, right? So next on, oh, Mac Bro Blaster. Oh, another Blaster player. Wow. All right, this guy says, Nexon really should have thought about your progression more when doing this patch. The game does revolve around you. Yeah, it's just a fun comment, right? But again, yeah, not really the point of this video, right? You as a viewer always, you know, you are tasked with thinking about how my situation would translate into your situation, right? And so next up we have Lambdax. I think adding more options, even if you think it is a worse option, isn't necessarily bad, since people can decide themselves whether to push for better XP meso frag rates or work with familiars based on what they're looking for. I'd argue for people who already have familiars prefer to grind in the higher level maps. This is probably good since there will be less competition and therefore more burning for higher level areas. In my opinion, the only real concern for populated servers, mainly NA reboot, is that the 200 to 264 area, people might struggle to find a map which really suck for them, especially new players. Hopefully it doesn't turn out like that. Yeah, I think this guy put it the best in terms of describing why adding more options isn't really a bad thing, right? Adding more options is a good thing, after all, right? Then we have Daniel van Graaf saying, that has got to be the shittiest take I have heard. I struggled, so other people should struggle too. My progression, herder. Yeah, again, yeah, just a duplicate comment, and yeah, this, you know, honestly, I struggled, so other people should struggle too was not part of this video, so I don't know. You really, I don't know. This kind of hurts me, right? Because no, I'm not gonna get into it, and I'm not gonna be mean, right? Okay, so next up we have Nathan with 1 like, but I did respond. Oh wow, okay, because he took the time to write a big comment, and I probably also took the time to respond. You can read it if you want, but let's stick to the more popular comments here for the moment. Osmosis Maple writes, if I see you grind farm in Cernium or burning Cernium, I'll defame you. With 17 upvotes. Yeah, just a funny comment. Alright, next we have Superma for glad Nexon didn't first think about you then. There had to be people complaining about that. You already have a really good familiar setup, so why would Cernium farms slow you down at all? Just don't farm them. Simple as it is, right? I think we addressed this kind of comment already. Next up we have Vonsky GMS, another progression YouTuber that I also follow. Feel free to check out his content, right? I get where you're coming from. I would have liked to see them released in all areas at the same time, since it took so long. Hopefully it doesn't take too long for them to include the other areas. I don't want to see it become they are coming sometime soon, just in the works kind of thing. I'm mostly happy to see that they are making at least some sort of effort with this change, even if it hurt me quite a bit to go participate in it currently. Yeah, I don't know, I got nothing to say besides, yeah, I also hope for the best, but honestly the future is looking kind of grim because they haven't done anything about it, and now with this announcement, it doesn't really look that well for us, so... The next comment is by Swift Little Eagle here, saying, I think with the assumption that farms will eventually get added to further areas, this is a good change. Obviously not the best change, but a good one. Edit, just to be clear, I totally get where you're coming from, but I think you're being disingenuous in not at least admitting that it's a step in the right direction. Sure, it's the bare minimum, but at least it's the bare minimum. Yeah, like I said, creating YouTube videos is honestly kind of hard at times because you really have to account for everything that you say, right? For me, this was obvious and I wouldn't have pointed it out ever, to be honest. But, you know, I see, just judging from the comments, that a lot of people would have wished for me to point out the obvious here. Next up we have Somnia saying, I've been a fan of your videos for a long time. This video is a fat L. What are you actually upset about? You legit had the luxury of farming farms before we could get frags. You don't even need farms anymore unless you're min-maxing them. It's not even something that should even bother you at this point, lol. What if I said, fuck this game is so shit because Nightwalker is the most OP class and they need a big nerf. That doesn't benefit me at all, so why would I wish that? Doesn't make sense. You're legit saying this is a bad change, but again, it doesn't affect you at all. Please explain why. And yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the video. Next up, we have Navi UD9BT with remove this video. Okay. Then we have Jafar Haiki saying, man, you have 80% boss damage farms. You don't need to, you do not need boss farms anymore. I never seen boss farm. Go for XP and leave the farms game. Yeah. Yeah. Now, you know, now it's become more apparent to me. The obligation has died down completely, and I wouldn't have returned to Cernium to farm familiars on my Nightwalker if I would be still playing that character. Riff Say Off is saying, bro probably should have spent the 20 some hours editing this video to grind out 10 webs, 20-hour gains. Yeah, it did not take me 20 hours to create the video. You know, my workflow is way slimmer. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to push out weekly videos at all. I'm telling you. Next up, we have a larger comment, but, you know, no interest from the general community, and I already addressed it. So let's see. Alright, here we have Sydney Tran saying, most L video you've ever released. Or ICS saying, you complain so much. Yeah, I don't know. Thanks for the comment, right? It's good for the metrics, so yeah. Then we have a comment that I liked. Yo Soga, I think you might be a little bit overreacting to this change. I think what Nexon is trying to do is use the early 260 era to test something out about the familiar system and to speed up the progress on lower level characters and bring everyone on similar damage level. This change benefit most of the players like daily story players. Let Inkwell cook for a while and let's see. I would say don't go back to grind familiars, keep progressing your main. I think this is a fair argument, but it misses right here when this guy is saying that this would bring everyone on a similar damage level, which is not true. It's not even close to being true. This is probably coming from the expectation to go down to Cernium and farm there for 1 month and come out with 100% boss damage familiars, which is, you know, not anybody's experience, to be honest. Then we have Joa saying this video makes no sense. Okay. Alright, big comment. Man, I didn't respond to that. I usually want to make an effort to respond to larger comments. Sorry. Oh, we have Rosebuds GMS saying, what's annoying to me is why don't they just release it in all Grandest areas? Why are they scared of later game players improving their familiars? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Now, yeah, it's just benefiting players that have played for like 1 week 5 years ago and had the opportunity to farm out broken ass familiars, and the rest are left in the dust. Similar, of course, you know, with the badge, etc., right? And we are slowly but surely working towards making the Hasake badge not as overpowered anymore, right? By introducing the 10th set effect for the pitched item set, etc., but the amount of effort is not even close to being comparable. So, Slowed Ecstasy writes, I don't understand why everyone is crying out. It's a video about his progression, not a guide for other players. Yeah, exactly. Like every other video. And yeah, I think that does it for this video. We have a couple of question marks here. And yeah, oh, also Nox has written something right here. Let's end with this comment. People acting like the title isn't my progression. He makes good, reasonable points for his progression. There will be players in similar situations that shouldn't farm in Cernium for too long. Y'all acting like him making this video somehow deletes Cernium familiars. It just helps advocate for more farms in later areas. Yeah, Nox understood it, right? But he's also in a similar peer group. Way more progressed than me or than my Nightwalker, right? But you see most of the players, and it's, you know, to nobody's fault, right? Obviously, are not as far progressed and had a harder time understanding my video. And for me, the main takeaway is just put more effort into trying to convey a message, right? And this video did not do that, right? Because I'm a little bit stressed right now in real life. I'm a little bit busy, so I had to just pump out a video, right? Because honestly, in order for me to keep being happy with this hobby, right, with doing YouTube, I really have to commit to pushing out a weekly video. Because as soon as I stop doing that, it will all fall apart. Okay, so what should be the main takeaway from this video? If I were to sum it up into one sentence, don't ever get your hopes up for anything Nexon does. Right now, it's very clear that they only did introduce the familiars to Cernium in order to get people, especially the new to 60 hyperburners, familiar enough with the system so they get to know how much strength can be extracted from the system to then upsell them on extremely expensive familiar cards for 1 reroll per $5, right? In my opinion, that is extremely malicious and should not be condoned at all by anybody, right? And if you are somebody that is buying the season pass, any of the season passes, right, you're a cuck. Honestly, unless you have a legendary Princess No familiar or a Lotus familiar, right? The 100 people that this update is for, then I could potentially kind of understand, but besides that, yeah, guys, vote with your wallet. Alright, so anyways, this has been my entry for week 93 of my Reboot Progression Series. If you want to get early access to any of my videos, feel free to become a member. And otherwise, I'll see you in my next video next week, where we're gonna talk about Soul Janus a bit more. Hope to see you there. Take care, everybody, and bye-bye.